Hello and welcome to episode 86 of Retro Encounter, RPG Fans Off Topic podcast. I'm Mike Sollosi, Monsoon on the boards, and I have two brand new, almost, Retro Encounter panelists with me. First, Keegan Lee.
Hello, hello, how's it going?
And second, Robert Steinman.
I know, a wild Steinman approaches.
Right? Well, I'm glad to have you finally on the podcast, Rob, and glad to finally meet you on a podcast, Keegan, because we're here to discuss one of my favorite 16-bit RPGs, Dragon Quest V, Hand of the Heavenly Bride, or Bride of Heaven,
Yes.
if you're translating the kanji. And it is a game I like a whole lot, and I was really happy when the fan vote for our Dragon Quest game ended up being Dragon Quest V. I was almost positive it was going to be 8, but ended up being 5, and I'm very happy about that. So first, before we get into the meat of the game, starting with you, Rob. Now, can you tell me about how much Dragon Quest you've played before, and is this not your first time playing 5?
It is definitely my first time playing 5, so I think I'm like most Americans in that my first Dragon Quest experience was Dragon Quest VIII on the PlayStation 2. I half bought that game for the Final Fantasy XII demo and half bought it because I really wanted to try Dragon Quest. And Dragon Quest VIII is way better than Final Fantasy XII. Yes, I said it, and I still maintain it. I really fell in love with it, and then I didn't play another Dragon Quest game until 9, which I didn't like as much because I didn't have access to a lot of the online features. I was in the middle of nowhere in South Carolina and couldn't play with anybody. I've started to go back and replay a lot of Dragon Quest games because I really do enjoy that kind of that timelessness of the series. So I just replayed or just played for the first time Dragon Quest IV last year, and then in preparation for this very show, I started Dragon Quest V and I beat it for the first time. And
So you've already finished?
Yes, I
Right,
finished
okay.
the game. I will admit that it maybe got a little bit more love than Persona 5, which I think says something about the quality. No, I started having decisions to make between playing this or Persona 5, and I would actively pick up Dragon Quest V before Persona.
Cool. And for the interest of spoilers for the listeners, we're going to cut off the discussion roughly at the halfway point at the first time the player visits Gotha, which is a kingdom around the middle of the game. So, Keegan, same question to you. Is this your first time playing Dragon Quest V, and what kind of series background do you have on Dragon Quest in general?
This is actually my second time playing through Dragon Quest V. Same system, though, playing it on the DS version. I remember my first Dragon Quest game was 8 also, and here's digging way back into my memory. I remember when I was a lot younger, I found this random RPG website that would show picture walkthroughs of a whole bunch of different games, and I remember stumbling across Dragon Quest V there, and I would read it like a book every day, just going through it, just entranced by the story.
Okay.
Then once it finally came to the West, I was down for it.
All right, now this is going to get weird. I think I know which website that was. Was it the old RPG Classics website?
Yes!
Yeah. All right.
Ah.
Because this is my fourth time playing Dragon Quest V. I played it twice on a Super Famicom translation, and to find some items, I used that walkthrough on RPG Classics because it had pictures and it was pretty well designed. And I played that twice, once to marry each of the potential brides, and then when Dragon Quest V.
Mike.
Yeah. Oh, come on. It would have been the early 2000s. It was before I played 8. Which was and playing 5 and 8 like within a year or two of each other was really what rekindled my interest in Dragon Quest, because I rented the 4 NES games at least once each, but the only one I beat was Dragon Quest 4. And then several years passed. I'm much more interested in your Final Fantasies than I am in your Dragon Quests, and I never played 7, which came out in 2000 on the PS1. But when I'm just trying to play a bunch of Japan-only Super Famicom games via illegal means, Dragon Quest V was one of the ones that popped up. So I played it in the early 2000s, and then a year or so later, 8 came out, and I play that, and then I get so fired up about Dragon Quest again, I buy the first 3 on Game Boy Color, and then beat all of the DS ones as they come out in the United States. So yeah, this was one of the games that made me interested in Dragon Quest again, and I really, really like 5.
Now, Five was originally released for the Super Famicom, right? That was the
Yes.
first one.
It was a
Mhm.
it was a Super
Okay.
Famicom game in I think 92 or so, maybe 93.
And
I don't have
and
the
there's
date.
and there's a damn PS2 remake of this game.
I
Like
own
this
I
thing's
own the
on
Oh, yeah,
PS2.
that's
everything.
right.
I own the PS2 remake. I got it from one of my friends. I was taking a Japan trip, and I gave him like a list of games. Like, hey, can you get me one of these weird Japan only games? And he got me the PS2 copy of 5. I tried playing it on my Swap Magic PS2, but I didn't get very far. I only got to I got to the Ghost Manor,
Hmm.
and
Oh.
because and after that I just decided, you know what, it's too much effort trying to follow along with the translation. I'm just not going to play this thing.
Yeah.
But it's cool. And really, the only thing that I dislike about those older versions of the game is that your party size is only 3 characters, which makes everything way harder.
Hmm.
Yeah, you were telling me that I was playing the easy version of Dragon Quest V, and it hurt. It hurt me a little bit, but I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's only easier because of the quality of life changes that they make for you, and for that, I don't ever need to go back to that old translated Super Famicom version. This DS version is very, very well made and has a lot of nifty little extras.
Yeah, yeah, and I noticed that like later in the game when you need to power level some characters that will remain nameless, like the ability to gain experience as long as they're in the wagon made it bearable. I was
Mhm.
getting like, oh my god, am I going to have to level? That's one of the things in an RPG I can't stand is when your party doesn't level up with you unless you use them.
Right.
Like I hate that crap. Like
I think it's a little
Persona
better
5
when
doesn't seem to.
no, well, Persona 5 doesn't do that, but one of the confidants in Persona 5 gets more experience to the characters that are not with the party at that moment. I think it's the Moon Confidant, and like the Persona 4
Yeah.
has your out of party characters gain half experience. And there's a lot of systems like that, but in the Dragon Quest games, from 4 onwards, the ones that are in your wagon will gain experience with the main team as long as the wagon's with you. Like you can't take the wagon into some dungeons, like usually your castles or buildings, your wagon doesn't join you.
Yeah, it's very arbitrary. It feels like.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, no, it is, and it's always a little annoying when I don't have the wagon available. Even if it's just to have my my backups that can just heal my main party there to heal me when necessary. And also the heal everyone button is very nice to have in this game.
Hmm.
yes, yes.
It's all very convenient.
And it still has
Definitely
the
feels-
old it still has the old Dragon Quest menus with just the black multiple windows popping up. But
Yeah.
it's much more traversable than the old like NES Dragon Quest games.
Yeah, you can tell that they put a lot of work into making this portable and like easier to save. I remember like the Dragon Quest VII 3DS remake is really snooty sometimes about when you can use the quick save feature to like power down the system.
Right.
This game feels a lot better about that. Like, and it's also a little bit faster. You're not going through lots of story beats. I think as we move into discussing this game, what I found kind of amazing about the Dragon Quest series on a whole, and I think fans who maybe haven't played Dragon Quest but have played Chrono Trigger, there's melodrama in these games, but it doesn't linger the way a Final Fantasy game does, where you're waiting through like 10 minutes of cutscenes because somebody just died or somebody just got impregnated, and now we need to talk about it for like 10 minutes, or Tifa needs to slap fight somebody on top of a giant gun.
If anything, I think maybe they could have spent a little bit more time on the pregnancy in this game, because that is a extremely fast pregnancy.
Like, holy crap, dude! Like,
yeah, like
Wait, that's
the
not how
Dragon Quest
pregnancy
games-
works?
no.
No, apparently
What?
not. I know. I was just apparently human women are not cats, where they're pregnant for about 3 hours and then they give birth. But it's like the game doesn't linger, so you don't have these moments of like extremely long cutscenes where you could get into some trouble if you were playing this on the go and your battery was running low. I'm a poet and I don't even know it. It feels nice and speedy in that regards, and I think we see a lot of that in Chrono Trigger, in a game where you had the Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy teams working together.
Yeah, there's very little wasted space in the narrative. They don't spend much time bogging you down with story, and there's a lot of foreshadowing if you talk to every NPC in every town. But what?
my broken heart as I realize some things about this game. Like this was probably an amazing game for you to play again, Mike, because there's stuff in the
Mm-hmm.
early parts of the game that you really don't think about. Kind of the way a good movie, like I just showed my students Arrival, which had me like a blubbering idiot at the end of that movie again because of how emotional it gets. But like when you know all the pieces that are coming and about the
Oh yeah.
small little threads that don't seem to connect to anything, this is a really special game. There's some really adult style storytelling in here that's really fantastic.
Yeah, Hori, the writer of Chrono Trigger and every Dragon Quest game, is really into big picture storytelling, and usually by the second half, you see pieces that were scattered throughout the game start coming into place, and everything comes full circle beautifully in his games, I find, and you really see that me playing this game, having already knowing how all the story goes, like even near our cutoff point where we when your wife gives birth to twins, you're pacing in the throne room just like the very opening scene of the game,
Hmm.
and
Yep. Yep.
and yeah, and like me knowing what happens to the like me knowing what happens regarding certain characters like Bishop Lodja and Sancho, and knowing sort of what they go through and hearing their dialogue at different points, it they always set he's always setting something up, the writer of this game, and I really like how it all comes together. It's an extremely satisfying arc, and I think part of that is because of just the main character himself. You follow the life of the main character from childhood to adulthood through marriage and then through fatherhood, and then you finally engage upon the quest that your father was on, that you accompanied him with, and also to save the world in general. It's a
Hmm.
really satisfying arc, and the main character of Dragon Quest V is one of my favorite silent protagonists ever.
Hmm.
It, it's amazing that we don't see more of this in video games. I just started Raven's Shadow, a novel trilogy by Anthony Ryan, and it follows that very like Harry Potter, Star Wars. Like, here's the hero as a child, here's them gaining power, here's them dealing with like a big world-ending event. Like, we see so much of this in literature. And in video games, like I think maybe in an effort to get to the action, we just kind of throw you right in. Like the main character is level 1, and even though like they clearly have battle ability that's going to build up over the course of the game, we're treating them like they're already a badass. Like Cloud gets off and he's called X-Soldier in Final Fantasy VII. We don't really see his growth and development as a character except in flashbacks. And flashbacks are certainly very effective. I'm not saying that they aren't, but for Dragon Quest V to tell the entire story about the main character's life, it's just amazing that we don't see more of that in video games.
I mean, frankly, I wish we did. Like, it's one of my favorite storytelling methods. It feels like a
Hmm.
Greek epic or something like that, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Like there's something to be said for bringing you into the middle of a story. Like I can really get down with those sorts of things, and it can treat the audience with a level of respect. But I think in this way, seeing this character over the 3 stages of their life as a small child, where your dad is coming to help you every time you get into trouble, and then when he doesn't come and help and you end up dead, you're like, oh, Dad, why didn't you come and save me? Like, you bastard. But then you move forward into adulthood and then eventually to being a father yourself. The fact that you are not actually the hero of legend in this game is
Yeah,
also really,
Hmm.
really cool.
that is a really interesting choice, because in Dragon Quest games and like frankly in most JRPGs, you are the hero of legend, and it's made clear very early when you try to pick up the Zenithian sword that this time you need to find the hero. You're not actually the hero.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the little twist surprise on where the hero's bloodline is a cool little quirk that plays out in the second half of the game. But I want to go back to talking about the hero's dad, Pankraz,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
he's maybe the best. He is the best NPC in this game. He's awesome, and I think they really do a great job of communicating how great he is, which makes losing him even more impactful. because
Oh yeah.
yeah, like you said, for when you're traveling through the story for most of the first, say, quarter of the game, he is just wrecking fools left and right. He attacks twice around. He one hit kills everything. He heals you after every battle. He takes great care of you. And every time you go around into a town and people remember him and recognize him, it's just, oh man, what a great man Pankraz is. You're a lucky boy to have such a great man as your father. And he's awesome, and even his mustache is awesome. He,
Oh, he's a great character design.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
he's great, and
He,
he's
he looks like Mr. Satan if he was actually effective.
yeah.
Oh my God.
Dragon Ball Z effective. Your Dragon Ball Z reference for the day. Like
Yeah,
he
he-
looks like an awesome version of Mr. Satan.
Yeah, he's the difference between Hercule and Hercules, really. He's Pankraz is great, and then there's this real emotional scene when you're trying to rescue Harry, the bratty prince, and you're about to get out of the dungeon, and 3 demons confront you, and the lead demon holding you hostage forces the other 2 to beat Pankraz until he dies, and Pankraz just sits there stoically taking it, and you watch your father die in front of you, and
Yeah,
man,
that was a
it
bit
messes
much.
you up.
I
Yeah,
think
it was really good.
I think one of the things that really helps it too is that you see it in an actual battle. You know, it's not like a cutscene or anything like that. You witness the entire time as you slowly see Pankraz's health drop down. I feel like that's
and he
way
has a
more
lot of
effective.
health.
Oh my God! It took me like 5 minutes for that one battle.
You just sit there, watch your father slowly get his ass kicked and die. It's effective, especially since especially since he was like this superhuman awesome character for the entire game before then.
And I always like how RPGs can kind of play with power dynamics quite a bit. So Phantasy Star 4, when you first get Rune, he just annihilates everything. Like nothing can stand up to him. He can basically one-shot anything. And he's only in your party for a brief amount of time, but that allows you to see where you're eventually going to get. You're like, okay, eventually my party is all going to be like Rune, and they're all going to be like super powerful badasses. And so that's how I felt with the start of Dragon Quest V. And in the Dragon Quest games, like one level up can make you like super powerful in these games. So to kind of see
Each of those
where
stat
you're
points
eventually
matters
going.
a lot.
Yes, and to see where you're eventually going to get to as a party member through the eyes of a child watching their father just wreck house. That's a really, really good way of incentivizing the player for what's going to eventually come up next.
Absolutely agree. It goes from and just the hero worship of Pankraz to watching him fall is a sort of a vision of the future of how strong you can be. Because I think he's in the level 25 to 30 range.
Yeah.
And also just is a real devastating moment watching him die. And then immediately after that, you and the prince and Prince Harry are sold into slavery, which is a dark moment.
Yeah, that's nice.
It's like a real missing. 10 years pass.
Yeah, I just expected the wheel from Conan to be there and just like having the main character just like spinning it, and his calves are just getting like huge every year.
And remarkably,
Maybe I just
he's wearing the same clothes, but it doesn't really the size doesn't really matter.
no, he's got his nice little turban hat, which I love.
The tunic and the turban is an unusual look that you don't really see in other Dragon Quest games. I don't know. It's very distinctive.
Yeah, and he also beats things with a staff, which is awesome. You left out something though, my friend,
Oh, I did?
while we were talking about the early life. We were missing the best part about Dragon Quest V, which is you get a kitty. Okay,
That's
right.
Anytime in a video game, you get a kitty cat. Like, yeah, I have a serious problem now because I already own 4 cats, and at some point, they're going to die. I know. At some point, they're going to die, and I'm going to have to get new cats. I have to have a tiger striped cat named Jonesy, all right, because I love the movie Alien. And now I have to have some kind of tiger striped cat that I call Saber, because Saber in this game is awesome.
And okay, this is a weird aside, but one of my friends does have a striped cat named Saber, but it's named after a Fate Stay Night character. And as soon as they got that cat several years ago, and I already played Dragon Quest V on the DS by then, it was like, dude, I'm gonna think of your cat as the cat from Dragon Quest V every time. And but yeah,
the cat. He doesn't listen to you at the start of the game because he doesn't have a high enough intelligence.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I guess we're beating around the bush a little bit. There's a lot of monsters that join your party in Dragon Quest V in general, but the only one that has a real story role is your pet saber cat named Saber. And And monsters in this game, they'll if their intelligence stat is low, they may not obey all of your orders in combat. But it's Saber is pretty special because you and your childhood friend Bianca save him from some asshole tormentor kids, and then he starts following you around like a good cat, and you find him again as an adult, even though he had gone wild over 10 years. And if you give him the ribbon that Bianca tied onto him, then he joins your party permanently, and he's awesome. You get a pet tiger like in hour 6 or 7.
Hmm.
Yeah, he hits like a dump truck. Like he is just he can't do a whole lot except just hit and like do that whole focus your energy thing to get a stronger attack on the next round. But man, does he hit hard.
Yeah, and a lot of monsters in this game, their levels cap off at unusual places. Like
Yeah.
like some monsters they'll stop gaining levels after level 20, and then stop being useful as your other characters outstrip them in levels. But Saber levels up all the way to 99, so he stays good and keeps getting stronger throughout the game, which is very nice. And because there's only really a handful of monsters that are worth a low stat cap. Like King Cure Slimes are one of the few that are, and Golems are only cap off at like 40 or something, but their stats are so high at 40, they're still good at the end of the game. But with Saber, you don't have to worry about that because he keeps getting faster and stronger, and is a really solid monster the whole game.
Yeah, it seems like there's an investment on him. Like he's maybe a little weak at the start of the game when you get him back as an adult, and I ended up not using him for a long time. And then as I had a fungus. What was it? What are like the fungusy mushroom guys? I had that, a killer apple, and Saber, and eventually Saber started to like outstrip the other ones. Little criticism on this game because you can outfit all of your monsters with equipment. I really wish you kind of knew what equipment they could actually use instead of like having to highlight like, can they use this shield, can they use this whip? Like, why is it that the apple can't use a whip? I guess he doesn't have arms. That makes sense to me, but like
the fastest way
it's
to do
bizarre.
it is in shops it's easy because it'll show when you highlight an item, it'll show which party members can equip it. But the easiest way to do is to try to transfer an item to someone, and you can just sort of go through your whole party and see if they can equip it or not. But it gets weird. Like it's like slimes can equip boomerangs and staves, and only like weird slime armors like Gooniforms and tortoise shells. And a lot of monsters like Saber and dragons can equip fangs and claws, but no shields and only very specific helmets. It's a little annoying. I wish that the armor was a little bit more universal in this game. I agree.
Yeah, and the armor's super important because you can have like eventually my monsters started going down in one hit, and that's why I was like, okay, I need to go start getting some better equipment. Like, I think Dragon Quest V could either be really, really hard if you're unlucky and you don't get like good monster recruitment, or it can be pretty easy. And I had an easy time with it the whole way until about the 2/3 of the way through, and then I kind of had to switch over to the human party members. I'll leave it at that.
Right, and you have precious few human party members until that 2/3 mark, because you always have the main character, and you'll have your wife at for maybe less than half of the game really, but your wife is a consistent presence for a while. But most of your party is going to be filled out by these monsters, and recruiting them can be a pain in the rear, because we talked a little bit about this off air. But to recruit a monster, you have to reach a certain point in the story where you can buy a wagon, which is right very soon after the you escape slavery, and then
or you forget to buy the wagon and you kind of get there for like an hour or two.
Oh God.
I will admit, with these older games, I've started using a FAQ in the background just to make sure I don't miss anything critical. Because, like, with limited amount of time and like I'm playing these games, for sight, I'm gonna have a FAQ in the background. And at one point, I'm like, wait, they're talking about monster recruitment. What the hell am I? Oh, I didn't buy the wagon. Okay, well, let's go back to this town, and I'm an idiot. All right.
In 5, they do a pretty good job of communicating to you if you go to the bar in every town and talk to people, because remarkably, that's where you find most of the information. Because there's a lot of places in the game where you're sort of dumped out there with no direction where to go. Like right after you get married, you have this vague idea of finding your homeland, but not really, and finding more pieces of the Zenithian armor, but not really an idea of where to do any of that. But the way to do it is to go to the most recent town and go to the bar and talk to people. Because I didn't remember, I couldn't remember where I was supposed to go right after I was getting married, and where you had to do was go to the desert area to talk to the lady that was guarding the Zenithian helm, but I had forgotten that. So, but yeah, it's right there. You learn all about the Zenithian helm in one of the taverns, so that's helpful. But back to monster recruitment, you got to get that wagon first. Then you have to fight monsters, and you have a chance of recruiting the last monster you defeated in that group, if they're a recruitable monster, which is true for more than half of them. And then there's a percentage chance that they want to join you, and that percentage chance can range from 25%, which it is for some easy things like slimes and drakies and slime knights, or all the way down to, I guess, 1/16 of 1%, which is very low. And so if you want to grind for specific monsters, you can get very frustrated very quickly. And so for the most part, I just immediately got a slime knight because I know they're easy and they're good for the whole game. And then I tried to get a heal slime for about an hour before finally recruiting one. I think their recruit chance is 1 out of 32. And I'm not going to try and specifically seek out a monster until I can pick up a golem, because you can really lose your mind trying to recruit the harder monsters in this game, and it's mostly not worth it because you don't need to do a large amount of grinding, and it's just frustrating, killing, say, great dragons over and over and over, and not having them not want to join you.
Yeah. I didn't grind too much in this game. I actually I kind of just went with the flow, and at one point I got a golem fairly easily, and I know you were yelling at me. You were like, "Oh man, you got a golem! Oh, you bastard!" But
Golems aren't that. Golems are 1/8 or 1/16.
Oh, I thought they were
They're not that. No.
I thought they were really bad.
No.
I must have been something else.
Yeah, it might have been a cure slime or a king cure slime or I don't know.
Like
but
that.
The golems are pretty easy to get and super useful.
And I just kind of went with the flow. Like, if I got the monster, great. If not, no big deal. I really didn't worry too much about that, and I think that's kind of nice here. It takes a little bit of the pressure off with like the Shin Megami Tensei games of like, nope, you need this monster at this specific moment, or else this boss will murder your face and and bask in your entrails. Like, there's nothing like that in this game. Like, there's multiple ways to get through problems, and also having the whole wagon system means that you constantly have a source of healing. I've always found with the Dragon Quest games, like, some long boss fights actually become more of a resource management game, like especially the final boss of Dragon Quest IV. Like,
it's a bit of a battle of attrition. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like if you use all your healing items, like you could get to the end of the battle and it's like, well, you're screwed now, buddy. Like, so having that ability to heal constantly in my party, if I had a wagon, that made it really nice when it came to exploration and not having to worry about going back to town, even though I think the Dragon Quest games do a very nice job of handling that sort of mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, agreed. You can basically just get the monsters you want or go with the flow and use whatever monsters you pick up. As long as you have some healing to last you through the longer dungeons and long fights, then you can basically roll how you want in this game. And I'm debating how much monster recruiting I'm going to have to do in the second half. I haven't beaten the game yet for this run, so because I really like having a killing machine and a great dragon in my party, but those are both 1 out of 128, and that's really, really annoying to grind for. So
I'm not doing that.
I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. I probably won't, but we'll see how much time I have on my hands later this week when I play it. But yeah, it's your party is always interesting in this game. There's more human characters in the second half, and I think you can have a party of 8 humans if you get a little weird recruiting people here and there. But for the most of the game, it's going to be humans and monsters, and it's a pretty diverse set you can get. I spent most of the game with a slime knight, my cat Saber, and a brownie on my team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And those little guys can only equip hammers and axes, but just attack every turn and deal a lot of damage. So that's pretty cool.
I had a killer apple, a fungus, and a night slime or slime knight. And the slime knight was pretty good. He was lasting me through the vast majority of the game, and then eventually I kind of switched over because I needed party members that had a little bit more oomph. Literally, because that ability just kind of breaks all the Dragon Quest games.
Yeah. I like the name Oomph more than By Kill. Some of the Dragon Quest spell names got a little weird back in the day.
Yeah,
Oomph is always weird too because it only, I believe, it only works on the first attack. So if like you have an attack,
Yes.
if you have like a multi-hit attack, it's not nearly as powerful. So I think I started oomphing Yangus like crazy in Dragon Quest VIII, and it was like, 1,200 damage. Like, okay, like,
And it's a little less.
all
It's a
right.
little less useful in Dragon Quest VII because the strongest attack in the game isn't affected by oomph.
Yeah, but
the-
Dragon Quest VII could get ridiculous with that
Mhm.
stuff.
But with eight, I mean, high tension, cast oomph, then a single hit attack like parallax, you'll do a lot of damage.
Yeah. But I like it when a game lets me break it like that. I think that's
Mhm.
why we all love Final Fantasy Tactics so much. Like,
Oh yeah.
let me break your game. Like, I am totally okay with that. I don't think every game needs to be super hard or super challenging.
Let me
And
break
some of the
your
bosses
game
in
with
Dragon
math.
Yes, and some of the bosses in Dragon Quest V, like they did have me on edge. Like toward the end of this game, they are that war of attrition. Like, man, is this guy gonna die? Like, Jesus, I'm hitting him with everything I got here.
And well, I guess hand in hand with that, do you think that the game is a little too retro feeling? I mean, it's the name of this podcast, so of course we enjoy at least part of the retro part of it. But I mean, almost every Dragon Quest game has sort of the same flavor of combat with this. It's turn based. A lot of this. You learn the same spells every game. You even find a lot of the same items every game. You find the water flying clothes / flowing dress around the middle of the game in every Dragon Quest game from 2 through 11. So it's. Do you think that feels a little stale, or is it almost like comfort food, just like satisfying, knowing that it's going to be like that every time?
I feel comforted
like
by
it.
it. Like,
Go ahead, Keegan. I was going to let
Sorry.
you go first.
oh, thank you. I do feel comforted by it. I feel when it comes to retro, Dragon Quest V for me is right on the edge of still being comfortable enough to play it, but still getting that old timey feel. Like earlier this year, I personally completed Dragon Quest IV, and that one's starting to show its age a little bit, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Some of
I'd
the
agree with that.
just some of the aspects of the game feel a little too, especially if you're playing the NES version.
Yeah,
But, like-
jeez.
Get Kirill thwacking every other turn.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. I mean, Kirill goes from being like the worst character in the NES version to the best in the DS
Exactly.
version, just because you can control him. But just navigating through NES RPG menus is something I never want to do ever again.
Yeah, no. I think it's also a little tough because I'm doing this a little differently in that I'm playing a lot of Dragon Quest games in a short amount of time. There's usually like years in between Dragon Quest games. So you're talking about like if you played Dragon Quest VIII, and Mike, you and I were talking about this the other day. If you played Dragon Quest VIII back in 2005, the next traditional Dragon Quest game, because 9 was kind of a more online sort of experience. We
Yeah.
never got Dragon Quest X, which was an MMO.
Mhm.
You're talking about a lot of time between that and Dragon Quest 11 when we get it, in 2020 or whatever the hell.
Yeah,
here in
like
the
it's going to be
States.
at least 12 years, which is a lot of years. And,
Yeah.
I was blessed to be a Dragon Quest fan with a DS and buying basically 4 in a row. I think it was like 4 and 5 years when when
Yeah.
4 through 6 and 9 came out on the DS. So I was playing. I want to say from like the 2007 to 2011 range, I had a new Dragon Quest game almost every year, and that was really great. And but when 7 came out at the end of last year, it had been 5 years since I had played a Dragon Quest game, and I was Dragon Quest thirsty. I finished that thing in like 10 days or something stupid.
Yeah, you
Jeez.
went a little ridiculous with that. Like,
It
like
was
he
more-
tells
it was
me,
more
like,
than
yep,
10
I'm
days.
finished.
It was like 2 weeks. But the
It took me like 3 months to beat that damn game.
but I mean now it seems to be into the. It seems like that we're getting most of the ones coming out now, and because we've gotten both of the Dragon Quest Heroes Muso games the past I think like 2 years ago and this year for 1 and 2.
Yep.
And I think we have an excellent chance of 11 coming out in the West, even though it hasn't been confirmed yet.
Ugh, my fingers are crossed and waiting.
I think that with Dragon Quest, if you had a couple of years between each game, and this is kind of why I'm taking a break after 5 until I play 6. Like I don't want to play 6 until like maybe next fall at the earliest. I want to leave a little bit of time, but I do like that sense of progression. But for me, what it comes down to is the stories are always different. So like Dragon Quest
Right.
V is very different than Dragon Quest 7 is very different than Dragon Quest 8. So yes, you're gaining all the same abilities, which I find comforting. I love how we now have like a whole vocabulary with Shin Megami Tensei of like, I know what all these spells are and I don't have, well, okay, maybe I have to look up which one gives me higher accuracy versus increases my hit and evasion, because no one can remember that off the top of their head. But like having that as sort of a baseline for the experience is really good. And then the storytelling or the little systems like the monster recruiting can make it more special. I also think Dragon Quest does RPG dungeons better than a lot of other series because there's no BS. Like they're just fun dungeons.
There was some BS explore. in the NES ones. Like don't get me started.
Yes,
get me started on the Road to Rhone and Dragon Quest 2. Please don't. But in 4 and 5 they are pretty brisk. They're reasonably sized and reasonably paced dungeons. I agree.
Yeah, and I love that sense of exploration. I love the fact that you always, like, if you go off the beaten path and find this treasure chest, it's almost always worth it. And I think that the Dragon Quest games, far and above the Final Fantasy games, have way more interesting dungeons, not because they're intricate, but because they seem to reward exploration the entire time. And you guys know me, I'm an exploration whore. Like, if you give me exploration in a video game where it's like, yo, man, you're going to find a helmet over there with +5 to your defense, I will go over there and I will get that damn helmet. Like, I will do it. So I think Dragon Quest does a really good job about that. And that also directly fuels the economy of the Dragon Quest games, where, like, I was bewildered by my first DQ game because, like, I never had enough money. And I realized, oh, I should be, like, selling stuff. And so even though you pick up, like, a scale shield and you have completely out-leveled that piece of trash, it's still important for you to sell it so you can afford the next item. Like, the power jumps in these games by getting a new piece of equipment are huge, and they'll also radically change your party. If all of a sudden you have a weapon that's now hitting every enemy, that now makes grinding way faster, so now you've got a higher rate of gaining levels. And I think Dragon Quest does that very, very well.
Right, and you even mentioned earlier that gaining a single level can be a major power spike, because the way that they calculate damage and everything in battles, every point matters. So just a piece of armor increasing your defense by 10 or a level up increasing your strength by 5 is a noticeable difference. And explore and sort of becoming stronger and exploring and finding new things in Dragon Quest V in particular, but most Dragon Quest games in general, really is satisfying and rewarding in a way that isn't always communicated as well in other RPGs. Like in a Disgaea game, you're gaining levels so often and finding new crap so often that it loses its meaning a little bit. But in Dragon Quest, where it's more deliberately paced, every level feels significant and every new item feels significant, and it's awesome. And you articulated that much better than I did, Rob. But in general,
I do what I can.
In general, I agree. So
yeah.
Now, I guess moving on a little bit, the subtitle of this game is Hand of the Heavenly Bride, and I've mentioned a couple times your wife, your bride, the brides in this game. Around the, I would say, 1/3 mark, or maybe 40% mark, you get an opportunity to choose a woman to marry. And your choice in this game
a choice of
3.
Choice of 3, yeah, in the DS version, yeah.
Two in the Super Famicom version and PS2 versions, and they added a third in the DS version. And so you have the blonde Bianca, who's your childhood friend, the blue-haired Flora or Nera, who's a very nice wealthy girl that lives in the town where you get married, and Nera's older sister Deborah, who is kind of a kind of a less agreeable than the other two, but
she's Chi-Chi.
Yeah, maybe
she's Chi-Chi. Let's just come right out and say it. She's Chi-Chi.
Sure, Chi-Chi, but with black hair, and that's kind of messy. So, all right, just direct question: who did you guys marry? Starting with Keegan.
This time around, I actually ended up going with Bianca, but before this, I was a solid Deborah supporter, and I thought of doing it again, but I wanted to get a little bit of a change. I know people are kind of, against Deborah for the way she acts, but I feel in the long run, her story is amazing to see how she changes through going out this adventure.
Wasn't Deborah a Dragon Ball villain?
Yeah, Deborah is the king of the underworld in Dragon Ball Z.
I guess because
he's corrupted by Majin Buu. Yeah.
My mother's name is Deborah, and then she spells it that way too.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I'm gonna say it's Deborah.
I think it's just Deborah.
Although
know.
now we
I
like
like
some
my
awesome
version better, but I'll
fanfic here.
change it.
Like,
Yeah.
this could be really awesome.
Maybe they
I'd
should,
be
maybe
down
they should
with
have
it.
just replaced the Deborah in this game with the King of the Underworld, Deborah from the Majin Buu saga. That could work.
I mean, it is 2017. I think this could work.
Mhm.
I went with Bianca just because I'm a romantic at heart, and I felt bad with Flora being like, "No, I have my own love. I want to marry." And I kind of married Deborah in real life, so I'm not really sure if I want to express that while playing a video game.
No, I have met Jackie, and I am not commenting on that.
But like, I guess my question is because as you after the marriage you go on like your adventure, and we already hinted at like the fastest pregnancy ever in a video game.
Yeah, jeez.
Ever in any form of entertainment ever. Do Deborah and Flora also have like the fainting spells as you're like on
Yes.
your way to your homeland? Okay, because
The
those
order-
were moments
the
of
order
like, wait.
The order of events is the same no matter who you marry, but the dialogue's
Okay.
a little different.
I was like, what the hell is going on? Like, why can't she like make it up this mountain? Like, I was a complete tool and not realizing what they were going for. And I'm like, oh my god, I'm so embarrassed right now.
And the first fainting spell is perhaps 20 real minutes after your wedding night. So I don't know.
Like it is.
Just like real life. I guess they're assuming that you spent 7 months on that casino ship or something, or that just traversing the ocean takes months, just like the 1700s or something. But
Yeah, that was what my honeymoon was. So I mean, I understand. Like,
yeah, okay. So when we woke up on the casino ship, 7 months had passed. I get it.
but there's a real childlike innocence to this whole thing, which is really really cute. Like, it's got that Disney quality, or like old folk tales of they got married and then they had a kid, and there's just something really heartwarming about that. Like, I'm all for like gritty realism, and like I love my grim dark books, but like I don't know, there was something really cute about the way Dragon Quest handled it, and I don't know, it warmed my cold dead heart a little bit.
Yeah, it is cute. It's the Dragon Quest games are very sort of fairy tale-ish in their tone a lot of the time. And I would say it's consistent here because you marry your childhood sweetheart if you marry Bianca, and it very rapidly you have you're settled in your kingdom with your wife and your children, and it's very happy before the plot picks up again. But it's a very sort of innocent, sweet look at a relationship in a video game that I find refreshing. I think that the quote unquote marriage system in Dragon Quest V is inoffensive and fun, and it also influences the hair color of your children, which is the most important part of all, of course.
Oh yeah, of course.
I haven't seen your children married to anybody but Bianca, so I don't know what that would look like. I don't want to see it because my kids are my kids. Damn it! Like, it's important.
And the three brides do have differences in stats. Like,
oh yeah.
Bianca has more average stats, but the highest HP and MP. Nera has the best magic spells, and Deborah has the highest physical stats and can equip a couple weapons that the other two can't equip. So
there's like one super weapon that she gets access to that I was a little pissed about that. It's like it's a weapon that lets her attack twice, isn't it? And I'm going, God damn.
I think it's the killer. It's like the killer earrings or the Achillix or something. I forget.
It's the acrylics, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just like the earring item that you can give to Elena in Dragon Quest IV. It's a low boost, but you attack twice.
Yeah, I would really have liked that. Damn it! But whatever. I wasn't trying to min max my wife. Okay,
No.
I wasn't trying to do that.
And I haven't mentioned who I married this time yet. I married Bianca, and I decided mostly to make it for story reasons because they really sell you hard on Bianca in this game. Which
they do. They do.
Yes.
I think both of you alluded to it, but she's your childhood friend. She's clearly in love with you when you reconnect again as adults. Her father is like dying in his sickbed and asks you to take care of her. And Nera has a guy in her hometown who's infatuated with her already. So they really try to steer you in a Bianca direction, which is fine because Bianca's great, but it makes creates less of an illusion of choice.
I think it's important to mention that right before the entire wedding ceremony starts, that you have to do the 2 dungeons to get the rings.
Right.
And for the second one, Bianca will always accompany you no matter what. And if you're a big party chat user like I am, oh my God, just the entire time. Oh, remember how this feels like our ghost adventure?
Yeah.
Remember the ghosts? I miss your dad.
Yeah.
You're gonna get married.
Please marry me.
Hmm.
She's doing a hard sell. Like
Oh,
she
God.
really is. I'm glad you brought up the party talk, Keegan, because I feel like an idiot. I did not use a lot of party talk until toward the end of the game. I just
no.
didn't.
One thing.
I know.
One
I'm
thing
really mad
maddening.
at myself about that.
One thing that's just infuriating about these DS releases is that the party chat stuff is great, and if you hit B often whenever you go to a new place in Dragon Quest V, it adds a little bit of flavor. Your human characters will say something new every time, but the monsters will just say the same, like Pokemon-esque, like
Yeah,
the same thing every time.
Like, okay.
Yeah, but in Dragon Quest IV DS, which has a really vibrant cast of characters, they didn't translate the party chat in the American version.
Yeah, it's weird.
So they basically cut it out, which is really annoying. But in 5 it's great, and in 6 it's really good too.
Yeah, I'm really mad at myself. And maybe I replay this at some point in my life and I start doing the party chat thing again. It was also weird because I played very little. I couldn't get the whole way through it, but I feel like I'm bringing up Phantasy Star all the time, but what the hell. Phantasy Star 3 played around with this idea, Generations of Doom. It played around with the idea of like who you marry and that kind of influences your kids. And so I would again like to see more of this in RPGs because I think it's a really, really cool idea of raising the stakes. It gives you a much different perspective on characters. Watching characters actually grow up is really special. And maybe this is me just getting like older and married and like having conversations with my wife about whether or not we're going to have kids. Like, I'm sitting there like, do I want to do this? And that's kind of an impactful choice. And we've seen the daddening of video games quite a bit recently with like The Last of Us and with the new God of War. Like I think as these game developers are getting older, they're starting to ask these kind of questions. And Hori was like 20 years ahead of them with this game.
Yeah.
Of like, what does it mean to be a father? What does it mean to have like characters that look up to you? Because eventually your children kind of surpass you in this game. And that's a really cool moment in Dragon Quest V. I think that's what sets it aside as, maybe not my favorite Dragon Quest. 8 is still, Yangus is so goddamn awesome.
5 and 8 are my 5 and 8 are my two favorites. And
yeah,
and
this sets it apart.
The marriage and children aspect of 5 is a really satisfying part of the character arc of the hero in this game. And I don't know, I mean, other, games about dads and children are from around that time. Maybe Fire Emblem Seisen no Keifu, where you, the first half of the game you play as adults, and then in the second half of the game you play as their children if you paired up the adults together. But that's more matchmaking than actually experiencing parenthood. And it's really satisfyingly done in 5. I agree. Especially since for the first part of the game, you see your super dad taking care of you, and then for the last half of the game, you're the dad taking care of your kids, and you watch I guess minor spoiler, your two children, twins, a boy and a girl, become your party members in the latter part of the game. We'll talk about that more in the second episode, and your two kid characters are great, and they get very strong, and watching them become strong, like you mentioned, Rob, is satisfying.
Mm-hmm. We did leave out one party member that I feel really bad about, and we need to go back and revisit real quick. I really like what they do with Prince Harry, being a total dick when you first meet him, and then you mentioned before, Mike. Yeah, they end up imprisoning both Harry and you. And Harry does like a complete 180 character turn of like actually becoming very kind and very regretful for how he behaved. And yes, it's a very quick character turn. They don't spend a lot of melodrama time. Like there's no like coin flip scene right here to like illustrate how important this character is. But like it's a really, really cool moment where they subvert the fact that you think this guy's just going to be a dick. He's just going to be that role character of like constantly making your life a pain in the ass. And no, he's actually like your friend, and you develop a friendship with him. He goes back and he's kind to his half brother. That was again one of these like heartwarming moments of like, oh, you kind of subverted my expectations a little bit. I really like that.
And he marries the nun that helped you escape, and and then him and his wife are guests at your wedding right around the 40% mark.
That's so cute.
Yeah, it was just even having a wedding ceremony with your best friend coming to see you again was a really sweet moment.
Yeah, my one of my best friends from my childhood, Nathan, him and his bride to be at the time, they showed up to our wedding, and I hadn't seen Nathan in like 5 years, and that was a really, really cool moment. And I was instantly having flashbacks to that with Dragon Quest V, because as you get older, like you kind of grow apart from people. You move all over the country, you go down different paths of your life, and then at these very special moments, it kind of feels like a reunion. And I think Dragon Quest V really nails that.
Oh, what did you guys name your kids?
I went with the default names. I went with the default names. I couldn't bring myself to name them anything that like had too much emotional investment, so I went with the defaults.
Same here, but I kind of like the connection of the children's names with the main characters' parents' names. You know, Perry and Pancras, Madchen and Mada.
Yeah,
like,
Yep,
nice little connection.
I went with a different kind of connection. Since Bianca's Italian for white, I named the daughter Rosa, which is Italian for pink. And because the main character is the hero, I named the son Roto, who's the name of the hero of the legendary hero in Dragon Quest 1 through 3. So yeah, Roto.
That's well done.
Roto and Rosa are my two kids.
Did anybody else have trouble? Like at the big reveal when your wife is kidnapped after giving birth, anybody else have a really hard time finding the kids? Like I was like wandering all over the goddamn castle. Like,
you just have to walk next to the bed, and then the matron's like, "Oh, I hid the kids under the bed." It's like, okay, I'm relieved you did that, but it took a little too long for me to notice
yourself,
this.
God.
You could have said something.
I'm like wandering around for 15 minutes, like, where the hell are my kids? Like, I'm gonna be a terrible dad one day. Like, I'm gonna be like, totally lost my two twins. Like, I don't know, they're fine.
Maybe they're under the bed. I have 4 cats. They'll take care of them.
Yeah, they'll find them. Like, everything will be cool. But yeah, that's kind of the big like moment in Dragon Quest V where they really raise the stakes when your wife is kidnapped. And like I was like, I'm gonna go save her right now. Like,
and also a big callback moment is Ladja, the guy that like basically you watched kill your dad, is the same guy that kidnapped your wife and turns you and your wife to stone.
Yep.
Which is
you end the game stoned, which is always a good sign for a Dragon Quest game.
Yeah, so it's I mean that recurring villain is going to be very satisfying to kill him later, but that's we're not far enough to talk about that yet. So,
yep, that's kind of where we stop. Is you're frozen in stone, and they do this really like, you know, ultra depressing like wipe of like watching the years pass by as you are just stoned in this like you're basically placed as a lawn gnome outside of this mansion, and you just watch like this mansion family fall apart, and you're just like, wow, this is kind of depressing. Like being turned to stone would really suck.
You know, it's funny that all these bad things happen to the main character. If you look at his stats at the very beginning, his luck is absolute garbage, and I think the stat growth on it is horrible as well. I really appreciate that little integrating gameplay to story.
That's a nod that I have never noticed in 4 playthroughs of this game.
Oh yeah, if you ever do it again,
it's like rotten luck.
Is 1, and it does not get much higher unless you use seeds.
I would say losing your dad at that young of an age means that you have a luck of 1. I was really depressed that when you finally are unfrozen from your stone state, Simon Phoenix has not also been unfrozen, and you can reenact all of Action Man. Think of how good that would be.
There'd be a Taco Bell in every single village.
The Hunka Chunka, the horizontal mambo, like I
guess they'd have Sting do the music instead of Sugiyama. Which could be pretty cool.
Everybody needs to go watch Demolition Man. That is it might be the best Sylvester Stallone movie ever. I promise you need to go see it. And Sandra Bullock is phenomenal in that movie.
Yeah, and Sandra Bullock's super young in that movie. That was one of her first roles. It was before Speed, I think, right?
Yep. He's really matched his meat.
God, that Demolition Man is completely wild, and it's also probably the best. Who's Simon Phoenix's actor?
Schwarzenegger?
Wesley Snipes.
Yeah. No, it's an amazing Wesley Snipes performance.
Yeah, Simon says bleed. Sorry, we got completely off track here, but I All I'm thinking about now is the three seashells. I'm sorry. Like,
It's all right.
that's all I'm focused on right now.
And one of my favorite podcasts, completely unrelated to video games, How Did This Get Made, has an awesome Demolition Man episode. So if you already like Demolition Man, go and watch that, or listen to that. But we're Retro Encounter, and we're going to focus on Dragon Quest V for now. So,
Sorry.
no, it's fine. No, come on. I welcome all Demolition Man discussions on any podcast. Come on. But let's see. We've talked about family, marriage, and a lot of different plot points of this game. What else do we have that we want to address before we close the shop?
Well, right here in the notes you have music, which I'm so hit and miss on Dragon Quest music because I love it, but there's not enough of it. And we talked about this on Random Encounter when we were talking about Dragon Quest 7 and 8. And, like, the scores are amazing. Like, do not get me wrong. I love it. It's beautiful. But it feels like Sugiyama makes about 15 minutes worth of music for each one of these goddamn games, and it just loops endlessly. And I have a really hard time remembering the Dragon Quest music as a result of that. Like, I remember it, but I can't associate it with anything in these games. And that's
Right.
maybe one minor complaint about the series, that I almost wish that they just had more music. Like, do you guys know that the Resident Evil 7 soundtrack has like 100 and some tracks?
Wait, what?
Yeah, the Resident Evil 7 is because of how many different music cues there are in the game and how they stitch it all together. And, like, it's very ambient. It's a very different type of music. And obviously that's very different than Dragon Quest. But, like, Dragon Quest has these big sweeping, pieces of music for, like, the overworld theme, but it seems to only be about 45 seconds long.
Yeah, and
So
like
you're gonna,
all the different tracks blend together in a way that they're supposed to fit
yeah,
together
yeah.
like a classical piece written in sonata form. And if you compare that to, say, a Nobu Uematsu Final Fantasy soundtrack from around the same time, his are a lot about sort of latching on to melodies and catchy jingles that maybe have a longer
Right.
looping time. So it's a lot easier to remember Final Fantasy music or identify Final Fantasy music to a game than it is for Dragon Quest music. Even though town music and battle music is different from game to game, it's harder to make those connections because of the way Sugiyama composes it.
Yeah, and there's no, like, theme for Bianca, if that makes sense.
Right.
And I think that's one of the, I don't want to call it a negative, but I think that's one of the reasons why I don't remember Dragon Quest music all that much. Like, I'll have it on in the background when, like, I'm doing work in the office or something. Like, it's great background music, but I don't associate it with any big moment in any of these games.
Right, and it has to be said, I mean, a lot of the every Dragon Quest game has Akira Toriyama as the lead artist, and the main
If
character.
you speak ill of him, I will reach through the internet right now.
The main
and
character
slap
looks
you.
a lot of the main characters look like Gohan, like
As they all
do.
should. They all should look like Gohan. What's the problem here?
The DQ5
Now
guy
Dragon Quest.
he looks less like Gohan than the Dragon Quest 8 main character, but he still looks
Yeah.
like Gohan.
Okay. But, like, in Dragon Quest 9, I just made Vegeta. So, and if I played it again, I would make Nappa. So, like, I know a lot of people don't like Toriyama's art. I adore it, and it's because I grew up with it. And I think, yes, his humanoid characters can look very similar. He does not get enough credit on how, like, absolutely bizarre his monster design is.
His
and how
monster designs
awesome
are awesome. I love them.
Like,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
amazing. Like, the Draki is the best. Like, it's so awesome.
Like his cute monsters just look unbelievably cute. His demons and dragons look intimidating and sort of alien and crazy. And there's just so much personality in his monster designs that they might be my favorite monster designs in RPGs. Full stop. But I mean, I'm a Dragon Quest fanboy, so bad example maybe. But I love Toriyama's art in general, especially regarding his monsters. And I think I mentioned that Great Dragon is one of the late game monsters I like to recruit, and that's because for some reason it's my favorite monster in the game, and it's only been in Dragon Quest V. I don't know why. It's the only Dragon Quest game it's in, except for the Monsters sub-series. But
Huh.
damn it, I'm probably gonna end up grinding for 2 hours to get one again.
It is totally fine that the main character of Dragon Quest XI looks like Trunks. I am totally on board with this. Okay, like his humanoid characters do have a tendency to look interchangeable, except for hairstyles and armor. But like the monster design is amazing. If there was we need a Dragon Quest art book in America. Like I'm looking over at my copy of The Sky for Final Fantasy. I would like an art book of all of Toriyama's monster designs in Dragon Quest because they're so iconic. Like his knight, like the knight enemies, like the suit of armors, like those are so damn great. His mummies are awesome. Like they're really cute, and they've stood the test of time. You can use them over and over again, and they still look great.
And I can't wait to see what kind of new slime is going to have those dumb slime smiles on their faces with every new Dragon Quest game. Like it blew my mind when I saw the Shogun and Lionheart monsters in Dragon Quest IX that look like slime knights that are giant size with double swords. It's like, oh man, I had no idea such a small slime change would make me so excited.
Could we play Dragon Quest IX together, Mike? Like, I know we can't play online, but could we do local co-op at the very least?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Does that still work?
Because I mean, the DS's online services are down permanently, so we wouldn't be able to use we wouldn't be able to use the download shop feature or play online. But I don't know. We might be able to wander around in each other's worlds. I'm not positive though.
That really bums me out because I did not play that game the way God intended, and I'm still upset about it. I know it was my own fault, but like
it might get remade because literally every Dragon Quest game 1 through 8 has been remade at least once.
Yeah,
I'm extremely hoping for that. I never played 9, so now
it's very grindy. They need to chill with the grinding in that game.
The
like
grinding
it was
the side quest design was also out of control. There's those parts of the game haven't aged great, but the story's all right, and there's a lot of cool things about 9, but it's I don't like it as much as most of the games before it.
I like the swine. I like Swine Dimples. I like their take on Harry Potter.
Swine Dimples Academy is pretty good.
That was really, really. It took me a while. I was like, oh, they just did Hogwarts.
And I really like how that one princess's pet lizard was turned into a monster and was really trying to save her the whole time.
Yeah, it's a good game. Yeah. And it was neat with Dragon Quest V to not have a party system, to not have a job system. It's based around the monsters, and I wouldn't mind a return to that. I think this game actually does monster recruitment in a not so overbearing way that I didn't find it fun. I know some of our staff members at RPG Fan really not into monster recruitment games. I think Dragon Quest V actually does it very, very well.
I would like it a little better if the recruitment rates were a little higher.
Yeah, I can see that.
but in general, it's not. I mean, it's inoffensive at worst and really fun and rewarding at best, especially if you get attached to a monster character that you wouldn't get attached to otherwise. Like I don't know, my opinions on Dragon Quest Brownie monsters has improved very much over the past couple weeks playing this game.
It's a really good game. I really like it, and I believe Square Enix like a year ago they did they like reprinted all these games because all of a sudden they went on Amazon from like being $50 and $60 from third party sellers, like they were readily available again.
I think they might have been trying to clear out DS inventory.
Yeah, I think you can still pick this up. 4, 5, and 6. 6 is kind of the hard one to find. It seems like 5. Yeah. 5 was murderously hard to find there for a while. Yeah,
because 4 and 5 were published by Square Enix, but 6 and 9 were published by Nintendo. So for a while, 5 was like the hardest one to find. But then I guess Square Enix unloaded some inventory, and then 6 became the hard one to find. It's I don't know the exact logistics of it, but it is true. It's easier to find them now than it was a couple years ago.
Yeah, my copy of 6. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say 5 it's aged remarkably well, and then I think we were going to have a similar story on 6 where I had to get it. I had to buy it from like an EB Games, and it was just the game. So then I went out and got a cart and printed out the cover for the game so that it looks like I actually own it legit.
That is exactly what I was going to say.
Yep.
Well, I'm a sucker who bought them all at lunch. So I'm a bad example fanboy here.
They've done a really good job with these DS remakes, though. I kind of wish that I got to experience Dragon Quest VI because I know a lot of people say that the sprites in the Super Famicom version are gorgeous. People say it looks as good as Chrono Trigger. I I will say that the heavily pixelated 3D look in the DS games I don't really like in the environments, but like I'll deal with it. I wish that wasn't the case.
Yeah, 6 is a good-looking game. I think it's comparable to 7 in that it's maybe a little too long, but the story is pretty good, and sort of the big picture, sort of what's going on between the multiple worlds gimmick in 6 is solid. I think it's an alright Dragon Quest game, but I don't like it as much as 5 or 8, which are, again, like my number 1A and 1B Dragon Quest games.
And I think Dragon Quest games also do better when they're a little shorter. I think a 30-hour Dragon Quest game is better for me than a 70-hour Dragon Quest game.
And Dragon Quest V it's actually shorter than I remember. Like 30
yeah,
hours.
It is.
30 hours seems about right. And again 6, 7 and 8 hit that 50+ hour territory, which is a little less palatable to me as an adult that doesn't have as much time on his hands as teenage Sollosi and 20-something Sollosi.
You beat Dragon Quest VII in 10 days, you sick bastard.
Yeah, it's
like
it was more like 2 weeks, but
sorry.
But also it was 2 weeks where I did very little else than go to work, play Dragon Quest, and sleep. I'm not proud of it.
You clearly forgot to eat at some point, like during that whole thing.
I think I did.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I skipped dinner at least once without realizing it. But that was in the past. Let's talk about the future a little bit. Because in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have another episode about Dragon Quest V, where we close out the discussion on saving the world and continuing following in your father's footsteps, and about your wife and kids some more. And also, we're doing a special Xenoblade Chronicles episode very soon. That was a lot of fun to record, because a lot of RPG fan people have thoughts on Xenoblade Chronicles. This is not a surprise.
If they don't love it, they're wrong. Like that's all I.
It was a very positive podcast. I'll just say that right now.
I was gonna say, because that's the good version of Final Fantasy 12. Yeah, you
right? No, it's right. It's basically a game with a lot of cooldown spells and MMO style combat and giant open spaces. Except it's good.
I love the T-shirt of a clock, and every hour on the clock is Rhyme's face. So it is always rhyme time.
It's rhyme time. Well, anyway, it will literally be rhyme time in a week or two when we post that episode. And next month, you're listening to this in June probably, so in July we're going to do special episodes on the 7th Saga, a weird Super Nintendo game that Rob Fenner and I both like. And also, our official game of July is going to be the classic Earthbound.
Woo!
Which lost a vote for the game we were going to play about a year ago, but there was enough staff interest to bring it up again for Retro Encounter, so we're going to be talking all about Earthbound in July over 2 episodes, and I probably need to get started on that thing if I'm going to be on the episode, but I've been busy with Persona 5 and Dragon Quest 5, just too many 5s all around the past month or two. So that's what we have in the future. But if you want to email us in the present, the best way to do so is retro@rpgfan.com. You can also comment on the message boards, visit the RPG Fan Facebook page, at RPGFancom on Twitter, review the podcast on iTunes and your other various podcast listening venues, however you get us via Google Podcasts or whatever. And so, gentlemen, if someone wants to reach you directly, what's the best way to do so, starting with Keegan?
You guys can find me on the boards as Fozzie Bear, and if you're in the Twitter sphere, you can find me there as Kaylee Brand. I like to post a lot of really bad jokes and really bad opinions about video games.
Sure, okay.
Yeah, you can find me on the boards. I'm Pale Robbie. I always have been. I don't do the Twitter or anything like that. I don't do what the young people are into. But yeah, feel free to message me on there or directly at my RPG Fan email at robert@rpgfan.com. And I am the only Robert, even though we have like 7 of them now. So I am the official Robert.
There's at least 4 Roberts or Bobs now, and it's confusing. It's already bad enough that there's 2 Mike S's. But we got even more Robs. So, alright. Anyway, listeners, thanks for putting up with us for this hour plus talking about Dragon Quest V. Be sure to tune in next week. Good night. And good luck.
See ya.
Don't speak ill of Saber.
Kingdom Hearts is actually pretty good, guys.
What?
Bye, everybody.